Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Alexis for anybody who doesn't know. Welcome if you're new, or welcome back if you have been here before. I am the author of A Journey into Truth, Unveiling Life's Secrets for Truth Seekers. This book talks all about the last 6 years of my life, the spiritual journey I've been on, the adventures I've had, like going into the jungle and doing ayahuasca, and also just what led me onto a spiritual path. I talk about the lessons I've learned along the journey and the teachings I've learned from all of the teachers I've come across on my path. If you would like information on when this book comes out or updates on new books coming out, then you can visit my website at www.vibrate2create.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at vibrate2create. Here on Vibrate to Create, I talk about all things spiritual and metaphysical. I also talk about my own personal life experiences, the awarenesses I've come to because of those experiences. I also make reaction videos to things like spiritual teachers, spiritual teachings, inspirational, motivational, or sometimes funny videos. And sometimes I also make entrepreneurial videos letting you guys know how to self-publish your own books. If you're interested in that kind of content, you can click the subscribe button or hit the notification bell to be notified of when I post new videos so you never miss a video. Today, I am going to be reacting to one of my favorite spiritual teachers. His name is Eckhart Tolle. I'm sure you know that by the description or by the picture that the thumbnail had. But I don't know exactly which video I'm going to be reacting to today. I haven't looked it up yet, but I know that's who I want to react to right now. Eckhart Tolle has a very special place in my heart. I don't know him personally, but his teachings have really had a big impact on my life as well. Just like with my Wayne Dyer video, I will link it. I would go to the library and I love to listen to Eckhart Tolle's audiobooks. I read The Power of Now. I haven't read A New Earth. I have the book and I've read like parts, bits and pieces of it, but it's just kind of hard for me to like sit down and read that specific book. I'm not sure why. Maybe the timing is off. But I have that book, I just have not read it yet. But I've heard about it many times. So this video is 2 hours long. I don't think I'm going to be watching the whole thing. If you want to watch the whole video, you can click the link down below in the description. The links will always be there. And this one is called A Dialogue with Ram Dass and Eckhart Tolle, and it feels like the right one to listen to today. I always go with my intuition. I always listen when I have a little sparkle of watch that one. So we're gonna watch this one after I change my camera battery. I'll be right back.
I use the word sparingly. There are certain misconceptions around love because there are so many different types of love. It's sometimes hard to get away from the idea that love is some kind of wanting. I love this. And in the Spanish language, the usual expression for I love you means I want you. And that's very true in romantic love. You want the other person. And as don't remember who said it, in true love, you want the other person's good. In romantic love, you want the other person. And so other languages have different words for love to distinguish between the emotional wanting and something deeper, agape, metta, and so on. The Dalai Lama says, my religion is kindness. He uses that word, kindness. So these words point to something within you, an essence from where you perceive and interact with the outside world in a very different way from the usual mentalized, conceptualized perception of reality around you, including other human beings. The usual way to relate for people who have not awakened to that deeper level that I often call essence, or your essence identity, the usual way is to relate to other human beings through mental concepts or judgments. They become the veil that comes in between you and your perception of reality. And awakening is to become free of the compulsion to judge continuously, to interpret continuously, to label and name continuously what's around you and whoever you are with. And when that compulsion to label everything mentally, the conceptualized reality, when that subsides, and that subsides when presence arises, then you sense something in whatever you perceive that is a kind of recognition, whether it's a human being or whether it's any other being, natural, a tree or an animal. You recognize something in the other that before, when you were naming and labeling, you couldn't. When you were naming and labeling, the other was always the other. And nature also was conceptualized. Especially human beings become conceptualized, and the other. In the egoic state, the ego actually emphasizes the otherness of others by continuously criticizing, judging, have opinions, and mistaking every viewpoint for the truth. Every thought that comes in, that's how he is, that's how she is. And so there can be no love there, although that egoic entity sometimes talks about love, or it says, you need to love your neighbor as yourself, it says. I'm trying very hard. And that phrase, of course, comes from Jesus, who said, love your neighbor as yourself, which really means recognize your neighbor, the other, as yourself. And that recognition, that sensing, when you look at another human being in the spaciousness of just this. That's sometimes called it the formless dimension. Oh, the words are quite similar actually, grace and space. Grace is when the space comes into the inner, the spaciousness of the unconditioned divine consciousness comes into your life. So the quickest way of inviting grace into your life is, as I sometimes put it, become friendly with the isness of this moment, no matter what form it takes, because it already is anyway, so why not say yes? Because it is.
So I want to kind of give my own opinions or ideas on the subject of surrender, or on accepting present moment no matter what the external factor is, because in my book I have a specific chapter called Strength in Surrender, and in it I give this particular analogy, or it's kind of like an illustration of a experience or a circumstance. So I say, in this analogy, I say, imagine there's a man who is driving along the freeway, and as he's driving, there begins to be this thunderstorm, and there's rain falling down, and lightning and thunder, and he just starts to freak out, and he gets really angry, and he's like, this is the worst thing that could have ever happened to me, and why is the world punishing me? And he feels like a victim to this circumstance because this storm is so horrible and it's inconveniencing him, and now he decides to pull over. And when he pulls over, he gets out of the car and he yells up to the heavens, why must you do this to me? And he is so angry, and he will sit there until this storm is finished and feel so angry that this happened to him. And then there's another man who's in a different car, and he's driving on the same freeway in the same storm, and he decides to get over off of the freeway, sit in his car, read a book, and he knows that eventually this storm will pass. Eventually this present circumstance of this storm is not going to be there, and he will wait until it passes, and he will just kind of accept the present moment, surrender to the moment, and then when the storm passes, get back on the freeway and continue on. It's the exact same experience with two separate people having two separate experiences. Neither is right or wrong or correct or the right way to respond to this situation. The part that I am illustrating here or trying to convey is no matter what the circumstances, the way that we respond, the way that we decide to look at the circumstance, the way that we decide to add presence into that circumstance is how we will experience that circumstance. And so when he's talking about present moment awareness or being in the moment, no matter what the external factor looks like, knowing that every moment is only a moment and then continuing on after that, or by accepting that present moment, accepting that awareness of where we currently are, can be the reason why we don't have resistance to where we are and why we are open to receiving solutions to whatever issues are going on in our lives or whatever the external looks like. So let's say it's a moment of I don't have a lot of money and I need a lot of money, and in this storm, in this rainfall, one response could be, I'm freaking out, I don't know what to do, and I start taking actions, trying to find jobs, trying to do this. And basically, Abraham Hicks uses this analogy of pushing a noodle without aligning with the energy of what is actually wanted here. And so it's kind of like taking those actions out of that fear-based mentality, out of that I need, there's lack. From this space, what happens is we push the noodle and it's just kind of like flip-flopping everywhere, but we're not aligned with the actual outcome of more abundance or with seeing what is abundant already in our lives. And in my life, I'm not too focused on let's get more, let's create this, let's do this, because I think sometimes that can be kind of this reaching, striving, trying to find, trying to get, and that can even be an unconscious way to be resisting the very thing that you're looking for, because it has a resistance to it where it's saying, I don't have it, I need it, I don't have it, I need it, I need to manifest, I need to do this, I need to write this paper, I need to do this, and blah, 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 blah. And it's still, there's an underlying feeling of I don't have. This striving after, or this sense of not enoughness. Albert Einstein has this quote about the same mind that created the problem is not the same mind that can create the solution or can get yourself out of the problem that you ended up in, basically. And using the mind, trying to find solutions for what we see as a problem, leads to fear-based actions that lead to more of what we are resisting or more of what we're not wanting. And accepting the fact of where we are in this present moment awareness is not about, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write all of these manifestations, I'm going to write this manifestation board, I'm going to make a vision board, and then every single day I'm going to look at it and I'm going to think, this is mine, this is mine. Kind of like in The Secret where they talk about manifesting and the law of attraction. And yes, at a certain level, I do definitely believe that we create our reality, and that the things that we think in our mind are possible or that we believe are what leads to how our life progresses, how our life transpires, and what we experience. And also, being able to look at that present moment, being able to just say, okay, I don't know how I'm going to fix this. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this situation, but I will the thing that I can do is work in here. In my book, I also have another like small subheading where it is called From Prison to Liberation. And in this small little chapter, I talk about this man named Jimmy Santiago Baca. And I learned about him because he came to my school to give an inspirational speech. And he was a man who was in prison, and he was incarcerated, I think, in his 20s. But up until that point, he had a extremely tumultuous life, like drug dealing. He was shot at, I'm pretty sure he said. He was abused. He was also an orphan and lived on the streets for many years of his upbringing. And while he was incarcerated in prison, he said that he would have to be put in isolation rooms, or he would sit in darkness for, I don't know how long he said, but it was a long time. And in that space of all freedoms taken away, all avenues towards running away from oneself get stripped away from you. You can't go out and go to the grocery store, or go to the movies, or go to the beach, or start writing even, or like start, or even start anything. There's no possible way to run from this mental space. And so as he was in this cell, he had either two avenues. He could become insane and lose his mind, or he could surrender to that present moment, knowing it's just a moment and we just have to use our mind in the best way possible, surrender to the present moment, accept what is. And in that state of extreme imprisonment, it's so interesting how that is the moment that leads to liberation in the mind space. And while he was in, I talk about this in my book, but while he was in prison, he began learning how to read because he was illiterate. Nobody ever taught him as he was growing how to read. And so it was in prison where he started learning from a dictionary, where he started writing his own poetry, and he became extremely passionate about conveying his emotions and his thoughts through words and communicating. When beforehand, it was all about violence, and it was all about, I use my hands instead of my words to speak. And in this moment where he changed his mental space, and he changed his way that he was viewing the world, and he changed his understanding of how to communicate, and found a passion for words, he began making his own books, or he started writing his own poetry. And from that space, he became an author. And once he got out of prison, he became a professor, I think at Yale. And after that, he went on to create his own foundation for other children who were illiterate or didn't know how to read but wanted to learn how. And all of this began from a moment of, first of all, a rough childhood, and being in prison, being cornered into this tiny little spot where his mind became the only place where he had any freedom, and he had to choose the present moment. He had no choice but to become liberated from mental imprisonment. And that led to him being up right in front of me and in front of many of my other classmates, speaking, inspiring what I'm doing right now, talking to you guys about my own experiences. I got a message. But that moment of loss of control over external led to a freedom from within. And I think that is kind of what Eckhart Tolle is getting at here, is what the external factors are do not have to dictate where the mind goes, do not have to dictate where we decide. It's like the men in the cars. I can decide to liberate, to surrender, to accept what is, and decide there is a solution to this, and the solution is to stay on the side of the road and to read a book. The solution is I wait until it finishes, I surrender, with whether it is action or inaction, as opposed to I completely feel like I'm a victim to the circumstance. Every day I wake up and I say, why did someone do this to me? Why did I do this to myself? I feel sorry for myself. I feel angry at God for making this happen to me. And from this space, he can get back on the freeway and drive to wherever he was going, and he could sit there and be angry and sit in his car and feel like there is no solution to this, I can't believe that happened to me, and then just keep this mental process of defeat and feeling like I'm a prisoner in my own mind. Anyways, that was a long-winded side note. So I had someone who was telling me, so if someone was stealing your car, would you just stand there and let them do it? They were saying this because they were thinking that what I was saying was don't take action. When I was saying we surrender to whatever it is that's going on, whatever our experience is at that moment. And she said basically like this moment of justice of like, but if someone was stealing your car, wouldn't the right thing be to hurt them back, or to sue them, or to call the cops, or to whatever. And my thought about this was, well, first of all, that is speculation. I don't know what I would do if someone was sitting there stealing my car, but the action happens in the moment, and using the mind to think about, well, what could happen, what would this happen, and blah 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 blah. All of this is merely only speculation out of a place of being afraid of that thing actually happening. And whether it is actually happening or not, who knows if that would ever even happen. But every situation is completely different from each other situation.
Doesn't mean you can't take action, but at the moment it is.
Okay.
So, in other words, you go with...
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Okay, so it doesn't mean surrender does not mean I don't take action. Surrender means this is what it is at this moment, not this is what it could be. This fright and this anger, or this fright and this anxiety about, well, it could happen, and if it happened, then I would do this, and if that happened, then I would do this, and oh my gosh, I should be afraid because this could happen. All of this is unnecessary fear, imprisonment of the mind, of believing that something could happen, and so it keeps us from actually taking action. That happens a lot with people who are following their dreams, because there is this fear of, what are people going to think about me? What if I lose all my money? What if I blah blah blah? And so it keeps you from actually taking that action and actually living your life in the way it was, I believe, meant to be lived, and a life of fun and fulfillment and joy. The joy gets sucked out because it's like confined, it's imprisoned because it's afraid to venture out and to take risks and to learn from experiences and to learn from failures.
With what, it's an expression, you go with the flow of life, and the flow is always here and now. You never go against it. But so this is always the starting point, is the isness of this moment. So that's then if with that acceptance, the gate is open for grace to come in. If you complain about the difficulties or the unsatisfactory nature of the present moment, the door is closed. Or let's say the shutters are closed, the sunlight can't come in. It doesn't mean you are more powerful than the sun. The sun isn't concerned about your shutters. But so when you deny this, you are somehow against the present moment, or you treat it only as a means to an end because there is a more important place I want to get to, grace can't operate in your life, or you only get a trickle just to keep you going, just an occasional trickle, occasionally when you go, oh, look at that sunset, and for a moment the complaining entity subsides, and there's a moment where grace can come in and you can live on that for 3 weeks, one sunset. But of course, that's only a trickle.